Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 86. England have made life difficult for themselves, but by no means impossible. Eddie Jones has announced his new squad to face the Springboks on Saturday, and you're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Hey guys, welcome back. Team has been announced for Saturday's second test against the Springboks, and I am of course joined by Dan. Hi mate.
Hi mate, you alright?
Yeah, I'm good. Obviously not the result we were looking for last weekend. We've had a bit of time to digest it all, and now it's, we have no choice but to look forward to game 2, test number 2, and hopefully the start of a 2-1 series victory for England.
No doubt it will be. So I had a look back at last week's match, had another watch of it, and to me there are a few key points. First thing I want to say, Faf de Klerk's performance is one of the all-time great international performances. I can't remember the last time I saw a performance that good. Yeah. He was absolutely brilliant. So I think credit where credit's due. Credit where credit's due. Is that right? That sounds right.
Credit where credit is due. Absolutely.
Credit where credit is due. Thank you to him. South Africa played really well. Clive Woodward described this week, and I'm not saying, he's saying that England's results in 2018 have been a horror show. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with that with regards to results-wise. If we were told at the start of 2018 that's the results, it does seem like a horror show. But actually, there's still a lot of positives. We're having the blip, and yes, it does need to be sorted, and I think there's certain key areas, but we're still a good team. We still got brilliant players.
Yeah.
We're not now out of the running to not be a World Cup winning team, because we're still a great team. So I'm still really positive. There's parts that are really pissing me off. But discipline, to me, that is our biggest thing to sort out. I think we really need to sort that out. It's just becoming childish.
Well, it is. It's the one thing that you kind of look at and just say, in this day and age, with the professionalism that exists in rugby, and with the guys that are on the pitch, wearing an England shirt, there's just no excuse for some of this.
Yeah.
These are things that it should be second nature when you're at the very top of your game to not give away silly penalties, especially when the way the game is now, they're so costly. If they're within, and at altitude, if they're within 55 metres, 3 points. There's just no excuse for it. Mako, prime example, the yellow card that he got, there was just no need for it. He was tired and a bit annoyed that he'd been made to look silly. But you're a prop against a scrum half who's having the game of his life. He's going to make you look silly at times. Don't go and drop a shoulder. You know how the game works. There are cameras everywhere. There's a guy upstairs who's going to call the referee and say, you need to get rid of him. It's ludicrous. There's really no excuse for that kind of thing. I know we've talked about it before, and you've obviously said, they need some sort of system internally, like a fine system or something that discourages it.
I liked your wedgie idea.
Wedgies, yeah. But the fact is, it shouldn't be necessary. These guys should be able to just say, I'm just not going to do stuff like that because I'm a professional. It's like you say, it's childish. They need to sort that out. You're not going to be a world class side, and maybe they look at teams like New Zealand and they see them getting away with stuff, and if you can get away with it, I guess you say, oh, fair enough, you got away with it, but you can't think like that. We can't worry about what they're getting away with. We need to just concentrate on not doing it. If we don't give away the penalties, we don't give away points, and if we don't give away points, then more often than not, we're going to win. But I mean, if you look back at these results from this, year of hell or whatever it's being dubbed, we haven't lost a game by a large margin. We might have gone behind by quite a bit. We've always clawed it back, but just never quite enough. And so, you're talking small margins of error here, and we could be looking at a very different season. Now, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing for England. because they've had the losses.
I'm inclined to agree.
They've had the losses. They've got to deal with the pressure from the media, from the coaches, from themselves and their teammates. But they're not a million miles away from the results going the other way. And if the results had gone the other way, we'd be on some world record win streak, and we'd be saying, but they're still not there yet. They're still not perfect. And so, it's not a million miles away. But little things like those silly mistakes make all the difference. So they need to sort those out. I mean, if we're looking back, let's not look quite that far back, and let's not worry too much about what Clive Woodward said. He's a media pundit now. I'm sure he'd be saying very different things if he was still the head coach.
He said it in the right way. I think the problem is the headlines are like, Clive Woodward says it's a horror show. When you read the sort of content behind it, he's not slagging off England. He's saying
but even
the results,
right now, it's his job to kind of raise questions and but he would be, like I said, it would be very different if he was the head coach and he'd be saying very different things. So I'm sure from a in a different capacity, he would be looking at it a bit like we are now and saying, focus on the positives, because there's no point in focusing on the negatives. Like I say, if we look back at last week's game, which is where we are right now, we lost. We went from a record kind of, margin ahead to losing the game. But you cut out a couple of individual errors, and individual errors, they happen. They happen in rugby. Elliot Daly with that failed clearance, prime example. That's no one's fault but his, but he knows it, and it's not like it's a problem with his game. It was a moment of madness, and he'll never do it again. So
it was interesting. I can't remember who was saying this, but it was quite interesting when they were saying that perhaps the difference between where Elliot Daly is now with his experience at fullback compared to perhaps a Mike Brown. Elliot Daly sprinted across to cover that. He actually had time. He didn't need to go such for that. And maybe if he'd just eased off the gas a fraction, he still had a couple of seconds, and then you're not doing everything at top speed. Those mistakes don't happen. But he learns from that, and he understands that. And even at top speed, you'd back him 9 times out of 10 not to make that
But
mistake.
I think also it's things like, in that moment, was he completely aware of all his options? In other words, Mike Brown would have known that if there was any doubt as to whether or not he could dive on the ball and touch it down, he could have just slid into it and kicked it out. Because it was, do you know what I mean? And was there
I do know what you mean. I hope Elliot Daly was fully aware of all
Well, obviously he knows the rules, but because he doesn't play week in, week out fullback, under pressure in that moment, did he think, oh my God, my brain, I don't know, I need to touch it down? Do you know what I mean?
Point.
Were all the options there kind of by instinct, the way that they would be for a Mike Brown or, another out and out fullback? Maybe not.
Yeah.
That's going to come with experience and with time. And it'll be interesting to see whether or not that's something that Eddie Jones gives him. You and I have very different opinions on this.
We really do, don't we? Should we go into that a bit, actually?
Well, yeah. So from my point of view, Elliot Daly, world class player. I think you can play him anywhere in the backs, and pretty much, and you're going to be fairly confident that he's going to put in a performance. But I think that fullback is such a kind of intricate position in terms of understanding the game and the positioning in particular, that you need someone who really knows it. And I worry, you look at, the world's number one team, the team that's going to win the World Cup, and you're thinking, right, you need to be the best team in the world. Therefore, you need the best players in each position. To be the best fullback in the world, should you not be playing that week in, week out for your club? Like, does it make sense to have a guy that's playing on the wing or possibly in the centres from time to time, but never really at fullback, and then saying, but 2-3 times a year when you come together with the England setup, you have to go and play a position that requires quite intricate thinking, requires you to really understand the position. It's not really a position that you just slot into. And that's my issue with having Elliot Daly at fullback. It's not that I don't think he could be a great fullback. It's that I'm not convinced that he spends enough time playing that position to really become the best that he can be at it.
So I completely take that point on board. So I'm looking at it risk reward. My take on it is Elliot Daly is such a world-class player that I actually think, even if he's not playing it week in, week out for Wasps, which I suspect he might play a bit more. I know they've got Willie LaRue, but there is a lot more of a rotation system in rugby these days. I think what he could offer at fullback is worth a risk, but perhaps these things he'll fall short. And I think by the World Cup, even if it is just in the international thing, he will be comfortable enough at fullback not to make those mistakes. And I think his rugby brain is so good that what he could offer at fullback is something that England won't have seen for a long, long time. And more so than I think in Anthony Watson, more so than Mike Brown. That's why I like the look of him at fullback. I think he could be a real game changer there from a sort of counter-attack perspective. Look at Liam Williams, for example, in the Lions, like that try in the first test. And he was put at fullback. He's not always playing fullback for the club, but he plays a lot more than Elliot Daly does there, don't get me wrong. But
yeah. I mean, I guess the thing is, with Liam Williams, there's a constant call for him to be Wales' permanent fullback, isn't there?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an interesting one, and we'll see where it goes. And like you say, I mean, I think if Wasps decide that they do want to start rotating him through the 15 shirt, then that's a completely different scenario. Because my only issue right now is if he never plays fullback for club, then you're not getting the most out of him when he plays for country.
No, I get what you mean, but I think you can learn. I think somebody with Elliot Daly's ability and Elliot Daly's sort of rugby mind, I think he can learn that position fairly quickly. And you've got to remember, I mean, I know we're talking sort of certain amount of matches, but if he suddenly plays there from now until the World Cup, that's, 10, 12 games at fullback, at international fullback, where he will understand it. Not mentioning all the training, all the positioning there. And like we said last time, and we could be completely off the mark here, but with Mike Brown there, I genuinely believe Mike Brown might be there to offer him a bit of positional support, a bit of, just guidance to that fullback role. And I don't know why. I just think Elliot Daly at fullback might be a stroke of genius.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see how this one pans out. But he's there again on Saturday, so he gets another bite of the cherry. We might all be singing a very different tune at the end of Saturday's game if he's had the game of his life, which we hope he will do. I mean, on that note, I mean, look, just before we move on to Saturday's game, because that's what today's episode is really all about. I think the kind of the underlying thing here is let's not freak out. Yes, there are issues. We know what they are. Discipline is a massive one of those. We conceded 5 tries, but let's not forget we scored 5 tries as well. And 5 tries in an international, test level international, against top 10 teams is a hell of a result. Anyway, you look at it. So there are positives. There are. It's very difficult to see them sometimes. But that first 20 minutes was unbelievable. Some of the best rugby we've seen from an England side, in a long time.
I think it's the best since sort of 2003 vintage.
So they've got it. They just need to work out what it was that sparked that, that stopped them from kind of keeping up that, maintaining that intensity. And I feel like it's not a million miles away.
So a question I have for you, and you and me were discussing this on my drive back when we had one of our. We basically did this pod 3 times because we just discussed, but we only record it once because we do all the discussions ourselves. But how much is altitude playing a part? How much is that playing a part? And how naive are we to just completely dismiss it?
I mean, obviously there's been reports saying that the players have all said, and all of the kind of the analysis they've done has said that it's not an issue and they're not struggling with it. Yeah. I know that other players in the past have said differently, but I just don't see what possible reason the England coaching setup would have for saying that and therefore not training at altitude unless they genuinely believed it. And they have more information than we do. So I have to believe that actually it's not as big a deal. And actually, I draw your attention to Faf de Klerk, you've already mentioned, game of his life, one of the best performances you've seen in a 9 shirt, who has spent just as much time in England over the last 12 months or whatever, or however long it's been, as the England boys have. And they say that you need 10 days to fully adjust. Well, he didn't have that. And yet he was able to do what he did. And I don't think saying, well, but he used to live in South Africa. It doesn't work like that, because it's to do with the...
Oh, nice. Because we had this chat earlier and I used that. You've now counted my argument before I could say
Exactly. But it doesn't work like that, because it's just about the thickness, the amount, the thickness of the air, isn't it? So
it is, but
it comes and it goes depending on how much time you spend in at different altitudes. So he will have been as much at a disadvantage as England, and yet clearly he wasn't at a disadvantage.
Agreed, but if some people are saying it is an issue, if from when we'd arrived in South Africa, we'd stayed at altitude, we'd trained at altitude, and we were there now, in theory, if they're saying 10 days, although again, there's mixed reports on this, by now they would have had that 10 days. They would have been acclimatized. Why would you not take away that issue from the start? Why would you not say, look, we don't know how much of an issue it is or isn't, but let's not even make that argument relevant. Let's train at altitude. Let's keep them at altitude. So we can't have that excuse.
Yeah. Well, this is where I'm saying, though, that there's absolutely no reason that I can think of why the England coaching staff would want to put England at a disadvantage, unless it's some weird Eddie Jonesism where he's saying, no, I want them at a disadvantage because it's better training for Japan. But then Japan's at altitude, isn't it? Or parts of it?
I pass.
I think. I don't know. I know they've got coast as well, but yeah. But I just don't see why they would be saying it. I don't see why they wouldn't have just changed, they would be training at altitude if they genuinely believed it would help in some way. So there must be some advantage, which we just don't know, to doing what they're doing. I can't get behind the idea that they're just being naive with the size of the kind of the backroom staff that goes with England, and the researchers and the people who would be, the professionals that would be giving advice to Eddie Jones and England rugby. I just
I really hope you're right.
We're going to ignore all your advice and we're going to train down here, and we don't believe it's going to be. I can't see it.
I do hope you're right, but there is a part of me that doesn't understand. I don't understand the disadvantage of training there, whereas I understand the potential disadvantage of not training there. I guess that's my only argument. Yeah. I'm not saying there is a definite disadvantage by not training there, because maybe there's not. And a lot of the experts, because people were saying 10 days, I've also heard actually it takes sort of 3-4 weeks to make any difference, in which case there is no point. But I genuinely don't know.
Yeah.
In which case that's an answer. But if you trained at altitude the whole time, I don't see a disadvantage there. If anything, and again, I don't know, but so say at Eden Park, it was 1,800 meters or feet or whatever it is above sea level. At Bloemfontein, where they are, it's now 1,300. I don't know how much difference that would make. I'd imagine it makes a slight difference. If you've been training all week at 1,800 and then you're playing at 1,300, if anything, it makes you feel a bit better. It's like when you were training.
Your reasoning is definitely sound. I'm just.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm just. I'm playing. Not even playing devil's advocate. I'm just saying that I refuse to believe that they're just that dumb.
And and you're
therefore,
right.
And therefore, I have to assume that there's something that we just don't get.
Yeah. Oh, completely. And no doubt that's the case, because, like you say, they're not idiots. They are very good rugby brains. Rugby minds. So moving on, my one other thing, and again, this seems like a negative, but it's more a question. I'm not meaning it negatively, but we've leaked a lot of points in the last 2 games, and that tends to be because of a breakdown quick ball. Why is our defence suddenly gone a bit crap? I mean, our defence was very strong. Has something changed? Has it just been because we haven't adapted quite to this quick ball sort of at the breakdown? We haven't quite yet sort of based our defence system upon such quick ball, because I mean that's how Scotland got us. That's how, I mean, let's face it, that's how sort of France and South Africa definitely found us out there. Could it be that we just haven't yet quite adapted to this really quick way of thinking? Because England seem to be found out. If you play really quick ball rugby, England are very beatable.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you think back, I'm thinking on my feet here, and I'm thinking if you think back to the times when England's defence was this rock that people would talk about, you picture England camped on their 5 metre line and teams picking and going, and getting nowhere.
Like in Australia when we won 3-0.
Yeah, but that's not the defence you're talking about now, because you're now talking about teams' ability to spread the ball really quickly and suck England players in and create overlaps and create gaps. Which is, and I think that's a different type of defence, and maybe it's something that's been highlighted. And England have never been particularly good at it, but it just never had to be until now, and therefore, it's a worry. I mean, they can do it in attack. That 20 minutes last weekend, that first 20 minutes, they were doing it to South Africa, so they know what they're trying to do to the opposition. They should therefore know what the opposition would do to them if the roles were reversed. I don't know the answer. They seem to have a game plan for going forwards, but not really a game plan for when they're backpedaling. And
so Wiseman, so Wiseman's in attack. He did seem to offer something because, like you say, that first 20 minutes did look good. I hope he hangs about a bit. Actually, well, I like us having an attack coach. I have no idea whether he will or won't, but I hope he does hang about.
On an aside, by the way, when we're talking about coaches, we did have a little debate a few weeks back on one of our episodes about whether Gustard would go on tour, and of course he is there. So just I think that was what I said. So that's probably like 8-0 to me.
I think we cleared that up in the episode. I just googled, will Gustard go on the tour, and it said yes.
No, 8-0 to me. Anyway,
8-0.
Let's
the other 7 we'll discuss.
Let's move on. Obviously, the next game, the big one, reset. We need two wins in a row to take the series, take the first ever series in South Africa.
I really believe we'll do it. I genuinely do think we will do that.
Well, and there are some changes. We talked at the end of well, I don't know if we did talk at the end of the last week, but we should have done if we didn't, about changes that we felt were required, and some of them have been made. I mean, the first one, which is non-contentious, is obviously Joe Launchbury's back. He was injured last week, which is why Nick Isekwe came in for him. He's fit again, so he comes back. Nick Isekwe, however, is dropped from the 23. The other big change is Chris Robshaw, who has always been, he's been ever present under Eddie Jones. This is the first time that he's dropped him from the 23 since he took over. He's out of the 23, giving Brad Shields his first start, which I'm looking forward to seeing. I think.
Yeah, me too.
I've been quite surprised, listening to other pods and reading stuff in the media about supposedly how negatively English fans have taken the news that Brad Shields has been brought into the England setup. I don't get that.
Oh, really? Yeah,
I could understand, Kiwis and other fans from around the world making a big song and dance about, stealing players from abroad and all this sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, he's got every right to play for England, according to the laws. And so why not? It's not.
It's not just according to the laws. He has heritage. It's different.
According to the laws of rugby, he's within his rights to play for England. So, it's not the first time this has happened. It won't be the last. New Zealand is pretty much made up of non-New Zealanders. So I don't get why people would have an issue with it. Sure, if he's not good enough, but if people have an issue, it's their issue. He's capped by England now. He's an England international. He will only, realistically, at his age, he will only ever be an England international. Deal with it. There's not really, to the guys out there who don't like it. I think his parents, or he's got one parent who's English, has absolutely every right to play for England by heritage. He is part English. To me, there is no discussion here. Relax. Breathe.
Don't poke me.
My point was less about the people's issue with him playing. That was more of an aside. But it was more that from my point of view, it surprised me because actually I'm really excited to see him getting a start. At 6,
me too.
Which is his favourite position, instead of coming on in the second row like he did last week, to see what he can do. And we've just spent the last sort of 5 minutes talking about the breakdown. Big part of that is the back row. This is what he does week in, week out for the Hurricanes. What he will be doing for Wasps. So let's see what he's got. Let's see if he can offer something to England that, Chris Robshaw doesn't offer anymore. And we've talked a lot about Chris Robshaw. We're big fans. The guy is a workhorse, but he just doesn't offer as much as he once did. My analogy for that is you picture the graph, and he's peaked. He's on the way back down again. I heard from someone else saying that he's a machine, but it's a machine that's running on empty. So maybe other people think that he's just a bit tired. But I think any way you look at it, he needs to be taken off for a while and give someone else a shot. And I think it would be really interesting to see how Brad Shields goes.
Yeah, I'm not willing to write him completely off from an England camp yet, because I still think there's things to offer. But I 100% agree with you. I'm really excited to see Brad Shields. I think it's the right call. Chris Robshaw has been an absolute legend and an absolute great servant to English rugby, and it may still play a part in that. And let's hope so, because I actually really like Chris Robshaw as a player, as a person. But right now, he's not the best six for England.
I think that's exactly it. Simple as.
Yeah, and I think rightly so. Brad Shields is getting a start. I'm really looking forward to seeing it.
So it's Brad Shields, Tom Curry, and Billy making up the back row. Lot of chat.
I like the look of it.
A lot of chat again about Tom Curry last week just being a little off his game. Just a bit quiet, I think, was the general consensus. Hopefully he gets, hopefully he kind of gets more stuck in, gets more involved, and
I'm glad
does the things that we've seen him do. Albeit at the lower tier, against the lower tier nations, and the barbars and what have you. So we want to see more of that, and hopefully, he's not just sort of being put off by the kind of the level of the game, because he's clearly capable. But yeah, so it's a good back row. Launchbury and Itoje making up the second row, which is much more what we like to see.
So that to me, on form, is by far the best second row in the world. I just want to see that. I want to see that come to fruition on Saturday, because when Sir Maro of Itoje and Joe Launchbury, I can't remember his name. Launchbury, play well. It is an unbelievable talent in the row, and I hope that happens, because those guys are two excellent players, and we're lucky to have them.
So, a question for you then, and after your initial response of no, think about it, and then have another thing.
Okay,
Maro Itoje, we've been singing his praises for probably 18 months, 2 years now, talking about how amazing he is, and yet it seems that the last 6 months, at the end of every game, we seem to always say, doesn't seem to be that into it. He's not the way he used to be. He's not firing like he used to. Doesn't seem quite as geared up as he once was. He doesn't seem quite so interested in playing for England like he used to. Is he currently a little overhyped?
So two answers, yes and no. Yes for England, no for Saracens. For Saracens, the last 2 games, he has been unbelievably world class. But just ridiculously. For England.
But we're talking about England, aren't we? So we
are talking about England. So actually, the answer for England, is he currently a little overhyped? Yes. And you said last week about maybe does he need to be dropped? And my argument was, are we judging his standards too high? If at the start of the season, coming up to the autumn internationals, let's say, if Courtney Laws and Cruz and any of the others, I don't know if Dave Atwood's back at Bath, but in France he's been absolutely, I hate tearing up trees, so I'm going with ripping up roads. But if Dave Atwood's playing like that, I think that where Maro Itoje before was on the team sheet regardless, I would hope now that he's now back on an even keel with these guys, and it will be selected on form. However, Eddie doesn't select on Premiership form. We know that.
No. And in some ways, the Maro Itoje thing, almost, although it doesn't seem to apply to Maro, it almost sort of justifies that decision. by Eddie Jones because you're thinking, well, Maro Itoje is one of the informed Premiership players right now, and yet you look at him in an England shirt and it's just not the same guy.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird, isn't it? Because Eddie sort of doesn't. But also, what I would say about this is Eddie doesn't pick on Premiership form, but the people he picks instead are not performing.
Yeah.
So rather than have, for example, a Don Armand in, you might have a Chris Robshaw, and Chris Robshaw hasn't been performing. And it's like, why are you not picking the people who are playing the top of their game? I'm struggling with it slightly. I do still genuinely believe in Eddie Jones, and I believe in his rugby knowledge, but I do think he's made some mistakes.
Well, definitely he's got a way of thinking that doesn't quite align with ours, doesn't he?
So that's it. So when I say I think he's made a mistake, that's my personal opinion. Now, what we got to bear in mind is his rugby knowledge is 10 times mine.
Yeah, and 9 times mine.
Nice. I know what you've done there. You're going to like that one. You're going to dine off that for a while, aren't you? But there's still decisions that I don't get. And I feel justified by saying things like last week, why the hell was Piers Francis on the bench? Now, this week, I'm really glad to see Danny Cipriani's on the bench.
Yeah. Well, look, just before we go on to that, because I do we obviously want. I think there's a big bit that we can talk about there. But just before we leave the back five, so we like the look of the back three. We like the look of the second row, despite the fact that Maro really needs to kind of just step back up and do what he does for Saracens in an England shirt, like he used to do for England, because that's the Maro we want to see. And we know. I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. We know he's capable of it. It's not like he used to be that good and he's not anymore because he does it for Saracens. So we know he's still that good. He just needs to start doing it in an England shirt. But it's a good starting back five. But it gets a bit weird when you then look at the bench because, firstly, he's done the same again. So 2 back row replacements in Nathan Hughes and this time Mark Wilson, his 2 back row replacements, and no second row replacement. And I just find it bizarre because you've got Maro Itoje, who we know can cover the back row. Yeah. So surely it makes sense to have a second row replacement because you've always got that option of moving Maro if that's what it comes down to. And I don't know, we have slightly different opinions, but for me, Nathan Hughes and Mark Wilson doesn't make sense when you've got a Sam Simmons who can cover flanker and 8.
Yeah, I mean, we're slightly different. I thought Nathan Hughes had a big impact last week. I would have Nathan Hughes involved 100%, be it on the bench. I thought he offers value. Mark Wilson to me. So here's where I think we went wrong, and it's something in the centres. So which we'll cover in a bit. So Mark Wilson, good player, good season. I would have a second row there. Now I'm trying to remember. So Courtney Laws and Cruz, or even Atwood, who's been playing brilliantly this season. Why are they? I can't remember if they're injured or they're rested or whatever.
Laws and Cruz are both injured. Well, Laws is definitely injured. Cruz, I think, is injured, although he maybe was given a rest because hadn't been performing quite as well. Atwood,
I don't think Eddie has faith in the second row on the bench. And I get the breakdown's a big area. I think you need another second row. I would have
when
Nathan
you have
Hughes
a fit Cruz and a fit Laws, he always takes 3 second row.
Yeah, and maybe that's it. So I wonder whether he just doesn't have full faith in his second row subs, and he's thinking, actually, I'd rather have the extra back row for the breakdown if we're going to go hell for leather breakdown, and then we can move someone into the second row. With regards to, I can't remember your thing, Simmons. So my thinking on Simmons might just be the physical presence of a Nathan Hughes compared to a Sam Simmons.
Well, yeah. I mean, my issue is that Nathan Hughes is an out-and-out number 8.
Yeah, I agree.
Story. He's a like-for-like swap for Billy Vunipola, only not quite as effective.
Yeah.
So if Billy needs to come off, then I get, it's great if you've got a Nathan Hughes to bring on in his place. If Billy doesn't need to come off, and he didn't last week because there wasn't that option, then
but
you're then...
that's the thing. There wasn't that option. I mean, Billy probably Billy probably could have done with. I don't think Billy's still quite got 80 minutes international, just because he's been injured so long. Nothing to do with him. I'm sure he'll be there soon, but.
Yeah, I mean,
I think Nathan Hughes has to be on the bench. For me, Nathan Hughes has to be there. But the Mark Wilson thing, if you're going the other back row, I would have Sam Simmons there ahead of Mark Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Mark Wilson can cover second row. I don't know.
Well, Mark Wilson can scrap on the floor probably better than Sam Simmons, which is maybe where the thinking is.
Yeah,
Mark Wilson can, he's sort of not. I'm not putting him in the same league as a Pocock or even a Hooper, but he's more that sort of player, and maybe that's what Eddie thinks is.
But even going back to the Nathan Hughes thing, and if you want to go with Nathan as that like for like swap for Billy, I still, given that Toje can play back row, I would go, putting a Sekwe or someone in as a second row cover.
Johnny Hill, I agree.
Anyway, that's not what's happened. He's gone 2 back row replacements again and no second row replacement, and we will see how that pans out. Hopefully both Maro and Joe have the games of their lives and don't need to come off, and we don't need to worry about it. So then front row is no change. So that is Mako, Jamie George and Kyle Sinclair starting, with Luke Cowan-Dickie, Joe Marler and Harry Williams finishing. Not much to talk about here. The only thing, you mentioned it a few weeks back, I think in an episode, although possibly it was just where we were chatting about it, but you were saying that on kind of, not on form, but on results, Jamie George has always performed better coming off the bench. Admittedly, he's had a lot of opportunity to do that. Luke Cowan-Dickie has always performed better starting. Is there an argument to suggest that actually they'd be better off the other way around, even though Jamie George is kind of officially the England number 2 hooker?
Yes, there is, but I don't. I think it's very hard to argue Jamie George starting. He was a Lions starter. He starts for Saracens and plays well. I think we're talking in England games when things are going well. It's a very tricky one, but I'm happy either way. I must admit, with those guys. I'd like to see Cowan-Dickie get some game time, because I think Cowan-Dickie is starting to play really well, and I think he deserves that opportunity.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess we'll see how much time he gives them this week. But okay, fine. I personally, I don't feel particularly strongly about that. I was just curious. Obviously, you'd mentioned it in the past. I was curious how you felt about it now. But I agree with you. I think
I'd like to see if
I wouldn't be upset
purely
either
from a
way
personal
around.
perspective. I'd like to see Cowan-Dickie start with Jamie George on the bench from a purely personal perspective. But I'm by no means thinking this is what's going on here, because in actual fact, I think if it was the other way around, it'd be more controversial than it is now.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure it would be for obvious reasons, but Anyway, okay, so we're pretty happy. But so that pack looks good. Again, like last week, maybe a couple of question marks over the replacements, but I think a stronger bench for the pack this week.
I agree. Yeah.
So let's move on to the backs. Initially, no changes. So Ben Young's starting at 9, obviously with George Ford and Owen Farrell at 10-12. I don't think that you'd want it any other way right now. There's been chat about George Ford, was shown up in the sort of 60 minutes, but he was so good in that first 20 and in the last 20.
I think George Ford deserves another chance at 10. I'm okay with that. Where I think the back has fallen, and I don't think there's with what's available. I get that team. Last week I didn't get Mike Brown, but actually I think he's probably earned himself a place starting.
100%. He's played. He played the right game and he answered his critics, and he's absolutely there on form and deserves to be there. We won't go into the game. We've already talked about it, but I question whether or not he should be playing at fullback. But we also have this theory that he's there to usher in this new era of fullback and kind of just support Elliot Daly. I'm not too concerned about it this week because of the way he played. As long as he does the same again, I'm okay. So I'm not too worried there. Centres, well, obviously Owen Farrell at 12, no problems there. Do we think?
Yeah, no shit.
do we think that Henry Slade is fortunate to have another crack?
No, I don't think so. I think we've what's available. It's the right call. Where I think we're lacking in the centres, and with Ben Teo getting injured, this has been highlighted. And you said before the tour, why would you not take Manu? And I was saying, maybe give him time to build himself. There's been so many injuries, but actually,
you need him
now with Ben Teo injured, we don't really have any major go forward ball.
No.
We've got the skill and the ability to make those gaps. We don't have anyone. So that's fine having that ability to find those gaps. But we don't have anyone who can smash those holes like a Teo, like a Manu. So this is where actually we missed out on taking a Manu.
I would love to be seeing this team sheet with Manu down as the 13.
God, yeah.
I think that's a very different looking back line then. And a great looking one, because you've got Ford and Farrell with the ability to skip him out whenever they want.
Yeah,
and the option that creates, because defensively, you can't drift. You've got to be on point, ready to tackle Manu if he gets the ball. And Farrell has that ability to look up and just make a split second decision. Either Manu goes at a gap or at a player, or it goes past Manu and out to a Johnny May with his ridiculous pace, or an Elliot Daly coming in from fullback.
And with a George Ford on a go forward ball, George Ford can find passes that no one else in world rugby can. George Ford can see. If you've got a Manu running a line, George Ford will see it and put it to him. If you've got Manu running a line and he's got a half gap, he is going to be bloody hard to stop. That guy, I'm not sure if you've noticed this about him, but he's got a bit of power behind him.
What, Manu Tulagi, really?
Yeah, mate. Honestly, you should watch him once in a while. He can break the odd tackle.
Nice.
I know you think of him as more of a sort of silky skills guy, but he can break the odd tackle.
Awesome.
And if you've got George Ford, like just seeing that and putting that would be exciting. So my ideal backline doesn't look this dissimilar. I'd probably have Ford, Farrell, maybe even a Manu there, Daly at fullback, and then on the wings I'd have between May, Watson, and Noel, and that at the moment would probably be my ideal starting
with the other one on the bench.
Well, the other one on the bench with a Danny Cipriani, which I'm really glad to see he's on the bench.
So he makes the bench, probably looking at fullback cover rather than
but
with the ability to do either. I don't know. Maybe he's thinking if Ford is struggling, he'd like to see Cipriani partner up with Farrell, keep Farrell at 12. But I would imagine Farrell moves to 10.
Well, I think if Ford's struggling, I think bring Danny Cipriani on at 10. Danny Cipriani,
I'd like to see that.
World-class 10.
Sure. But so it'll be interesting to see which way he's thinking, because we hoped that he was looking at Cipriani as a 10.
And I never thought I'd say this.
He was looking at him as a 15. And then, of course, against the Barbars, he played 13. So I guess there's options.
And I never thought I'd say this at international level, but Danny Cipriani is actually a stronger defender than George Ford. I never thought I'd be calling Danny Cipriani one of our strongest defensive 10s, but he actually is. So Danny Cipriani at 10 will offer, because although George Ford has that passing side and all that, Danny Cipriani has that, Danny Cipriani can make those breaks himself. He still has that vision. Can get that quick ball. Danny Cipriani is such a good player. He is such a quality player. I'm glad he's part of the match they scored for sure.
Do you need a moment?
I'm just relaxing myself now.
Okay,
I don't know, because you hear a lot of stuff about Danny Cipriani, and as a person, you don't know, is he disruptive, is he not? I genuinely don't know. But as a player, it's unquestionable how good the guy is. So I'm glad he's involved. Denny Solomona, pretty happy he's involved. He can offer some stuff. But
who else are you going to have?
Well, you got Nathan now. It's much. The one thing that's pissed me off, why is Ben Spencer there? And that's nothing against Ben Spencer, but why not Robson? I don't get it. I really, really don't get that.
No, I mean, I don't disagree with you, and I went as far as to comment on the BBC website about it, and actually someone came back, and I'm going to try and find it now, but it won't be anywhere near. It won't be anywhere near. But someone came back and just pointed out, because I'd sort of said, he doesn't even start for his club, and they pointed out that Saracens don't have starters, like at 9, and actually he's played more minutes this season than Wigglesworth, and he's Saracens' top try scorer.
Okay, that's kind of shitting on my argument.
Well, mine too. So if that's the case, I'm kind of like, oh, okay.
Okay, okay. So every week where you watch, I know the Premiership highlights with Durden and Flats and whatever, Durden Smith and Flats or whatever. Do you hear Ben Spencer's name, or do you hear Dan Robson's name?
Yeah, no. I agree with you. Maybe he's slipped under the radar a little bit as far as they're concerned, but maybe this is where. This is where Eddie starts to show why he's the guy in charge and not you.
Yeah, I'm still like. Don't get me wrong. I'm really glad Eddie's there, but him ahead of me, it doesn't quite.
Well, we've already established he has 10 times more knowledge than you.
8 times, wasn't it?
No, 10 for you.
You sure it wasn't
9
8?
times more than me.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. So I'm less annoyed about that than I was this morning when I read it. Assuming that what this guy told me was true, which he may have just made it up. He might be Ben Spencer's best mate or something, and he just... It
might be Ben Spencer.
Maybe it was Ben Spencer.
Was this guy's name Sen Bencer?
It was,
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but that's the lineup, guys. What do you think? What do you think, Dan, in terms of how this compares to last week and your expectations?
I think it looks like a better team than last week.
I think that's the key thing here, because I think South Africa put out the perfect team and had the game of their lives. I feel like they might have peaked. And if England are putting out a better side than last week and only narrowly lost last week after the perfect start, I feel like this is. I feel like 1-1 is the most likely scenario come 5-6 p.m. on Saturday.
It'll be later than 5 p.m. But yeah, I'm inclined to agree. So what I've heard is South Africa will only get better. I completely disagree with that. I don't think Faf de Klerk can play that well again. And that's nothing against Faf de Klerk. He's a brilliant player. I just don't think it's possible to be that good again. So,
and England will have had time to look at what he's doing and come up with a game plan to deal with it. So yes, you could argue, well, the South Africans have also had time to look at what England might have looked at, but he took England by surprise, and England didn't react quick enough.
He was absolutely world class. He was the best 9 in the world by a mile on Saturday, yeah. And that, like I say, that was one of the best international performances I have seen for years. I'm trying to remember. I remember a Johnny versus Ireland once where I just remember thinking, God, this guy's good. I remember Dan Carter a few times, Richie McCaw. But that was, for me, that was up there with one of the best international performances I've seen.
So yeah,
I hope I'm not over-egging it, but I don't think I am.
No, I agree with you, and I think you're right. I think South Africa will struggle to do it again. Apart from anything else, it will have taken a lot out of them too. Let's not forget that.
It will have taken a lot out of England as well.
Well, it will have done, except they didn't defend very well.
Yeah, but that defence thing's quite weird. I mean, do you think? And again, I'm not at all blaming Gustard. Do you think Gustard even subconsciously has only got half a mind on the job?
I don't, purely because of a few interviews that I read, and he was so passionately talking about the fact that although he's moving to Quins, he just the way he talked about the pride that he had for being a part of England's and the England setup and stuff. I don't believe he's put anything but 100% into it.
Oh, mate, yeah. There was no part of me questioning that he wasn't doing that.
I mean, you were suggesting that he was half-heartedly.
Well, I was thinking exactly that. But
you were suggesting that all he was thinking about was Quins.
Well, yeah, it was Quins and that stuff. But thanks for calling me on that.
No worries.
I appreciate
it. Okay, predictions.
So I'm not just look. every time we predict, I'm never not going to predict an England win. So I think we need to get used to that.
I mean, if England are playing New Zealand tomorrow on Saturday,
okay, that may be slightly different. But I genuinely believe England will win on Saturday. I really do. I actually think England are a better team, player for player. And I think we'll have from our mistake. So I think England win.
Just for points difference. Just do a points difference.
A points difference. I think England win by 6.
I'm going England by 7.
Oh, of course you are.
Of course I
am. Cool.
Right,
well, we'll see.
Yeah, we will see. And guys, obviously, thanks for sticking with us. It's a slightly longer one than usual, but we had a pretty short episode last week. We'll bring you a little bit more detail for this next game. But yeah, get in touch if you've got any thoughts on what we've said today. If you've got any different opinions, or if there's anything you think we've missed, you can. Well, it would be great if you could rate us and review us on iTunes. But you can get in touch with us on Twitter, on Facebook, at England Rugby Pod. You can email us, englandrugbypod@gmail.com. You can check out the website, www.englandrugbypod.com. And just, keep listening. That's the most important thing. And keep spreading the word. And we will catch you on Saturday.
Yes, we will. We will. Guys, thanks very much for listening. And once again, another live, or our version of a live sort of show on Saturday. Can't wait. And we'll be back soon.
Cheers, guys.